Hi everyone, I wanted to make this video as release notes for 1.3 and also to explain one of the new features we added that I'm sure will confuse people. So first off, we've added an output for the Bethesda creation engine, and you can see it's labeled as beta status right now. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good and it's better than what you'll get out of any other baking software. So here's an example. And this is all on one smoothing group, so you can see it's pretty good, but still not 100% perfect. So if you use the creation engine, we'd appreciate people testing this and letting us know how well it's working for them. In 1.3, we've also fixed a bug with how we were handling smoothing groups for Unreal output. So the handplane Unreal output, the way it works is it reads the smoothing group information and then uses that to calculate normals based on how Unreal calculates normals. And there was a small bug that would crop up sometimes where it would read the smoothing groups incorrectly. So if you had issues where there were smoothing splits in strange places on your Unreal output, this should fix that. And lastly, and the main reason I'm making this video, is that we've added a feature that allows you to specify the source of the normal map as either object or world space. And in many cases, they'll be the same, but there are times where that'll create totally different results. So if I load up Max, you can see I'm baking this cube, and it's got sort of an arbitrary rotation in the world, and that rotation is stored as a transform. So what this means is if I bake into local space or object space, it's baking based on the transform in the object, so it's all relative to the rotation of the object. So it doesn't matter how you rotate the object, it'll bake the same normal map. Whereas if you bake into world space, it's actually baking this specific rotation into the colors of the normal map. So as you rotate the object, you'll get different normal maps out. So if I load up Photoshop, you can see these are the outputs of both the bakes. This is into object space, and this is into world space, and you can see they have different colors. And then if I were to take handplane and build tangent space maps out of both of these, and then load them, you'll see the object space map looks correct because again it's doing all the calculations relative to the transform, whereas the world space map looks really wrong. And this is still a tangent space map, but it's a tangent space map with rotated shading. So what it did is it didn't bake relative to the rotation in the original bake, so the rotation is literally baked into the file. And then when handplane loaded the file and read the transform, it applied the rotation again, so it got double rotated. So to fix this, we've added a drop down in more options where you can select the source. So if I say world, and now I rerun this world space bake, and I'll just revert the file so it loads a new version, you can see this now looks correct. So basically when you set handplane to say world, what it does is it ignores the transform on the incoming object. So similarly, when this is set to world, if I try to bake the object space map again, so this was correct before, and now if I revert it, it's going to be all wrong. And that's because it's not getting the transform it needs that it's expecting. And this is file format dependent, so we really recommend you use handplane with FBX, and that's because FBX will pass a transform into handplane, whereas OBJ does not. So basically when you're using an OBJ file in handplane, you're always in this world space mode, which means that your object space bakes will not work correctly and you'll have to bake world space. Alternatively, you can just reset the transforms on your objects before you bake them so that this rotational data isn't getting baked into a world space map. So this all may seem kind of confusing, but in reality it's pretty simple. For the best results, have this set to object space, bake into object space, use FBX files, and set this to auto detect. So this is the default setup for handplane, and this is correct for 99% of people. If you, for whatever reason, happen to bake into world space, you can use this world space dropdown. Or if you happen to have a 3D package that doesn't have output for FBX, you can use OBJ, and in that case what you'll want to do is you'll want to actually bake into world space and not object space for the correct result. So similar to this, there's another common problem I see that looks pretty similar. So if you have an object and only some of the shells have the strange colors on them, the two common causes are just one of the sub-objects has a rotation on it, and in case it's this problem, and the easiest way to solve that is just to zero out the transform on the sub-object, or if it's mirrored or repeated geometry. And what happens there is if you were to bake the object space map with a different set of shells than you were to bake the tangent space map, what will happen is you'll get the shading result when you do the tangent space conversion of the wrong set of shells. So the shading will be correct, just facing the wrong way. So it'll be facing the direction of the original object space bake. And that problem is really easy to avoid. First, you can just not shuffle your shells around, which creates the confusion in the first place. Or alternatively, what I do is I just bake the same object file for my object space map as I use for the tangent space conversion. I just literally load the same file into handplane, and it doesn't even come up.